Shadow Minister Preet Kaur Gill.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before I start, I want to reiterate the point made by my honourable friend for the City of Durham. Madam Deputy Speaker, on the 16th of July, the Prime Minister said there had been a massive consultation over a long period before the decision to axe DfID was made. And on the 6th of July, the Secretary of State told the Development Select Committee that the announcement came first to Parliament, and the Permanent Secretary said that the first NGO steering group meeting was last week. So can the Minister tell the House, did the Prime Minister mislead the House, or did the Secretary of State mislead the committee, and if so, when will they come to apologise to the House and correct the record? British people are rightly proud of the humanitarian and development work that DfID has done over the last 23 years. We have heard today numerous concrete examples of things that the Independent Department for International Development has done for some of the world's most poorest and most vulnerable. We have heard from the Honourable Member for the City of Durham, Sheffield Hallam, the Member for Stockport, North East Fife, East Kilbride, the Member for Blaydon, the Member for Brentford and Isleworth, Bethnal Green and Bow, Putney and Enfield Southgate, who all made excellent points. However, this sport stretches far across the political spectrum, and this reflects much of what has been said today and in recent years. The Member for Wyre Forest, who made some excellent points. For my friend, the Member for Sutton Coldfield, who has been a fierce and outspoken opponent of this decision and who I know has been dismayed by the Prime Minister's decision. And to the Chair of the Select Committee on Foreign Affairs, who has previously said that he is not a believer that we should regroup departments as DfID plays a critical specialist role. And the Member for Stafford, who has said it was paramount that DfID remains an independent department due to its global expertise in aid work, its position as one of the world's most transparent aid donors and the vital role it plays in projecting soft power abroad and in bolstering our prestige on the world stage. The Member from Bexhill and Battle has written, "We all want taxpayers' money to be spent well, and that's why we must keep an independent DfID, because it ranks as one of the world's most effective and transparent aid donors." And the Secretary of State for International Development has said that the effectiveness with which DfID is able to deliver aid is because the department has decades of honed experience in understanding the most effective and targeted ways of spending taxpayers' money. It is astonishing, then, that the Prime Minister has, in the middle of a global pandemic, decided not only to ignore voices from people in the Global South, members from this side of the House and UK-based international charities, but he has totally disregarded members of his own party who have time and time again laid out the compelling case for an independent department for international development. Instead, he has chosen to engage in a very expensive Whitehall restructure. And even before any of the waste in taxpayers' money from ODA being spent by other government departments who have consistently displayed poor value for money when compared to DfID spend, the cost of this merger will be at least £50 million. And when people are facing the prospect of an economy in dire straits, does the Minister support his Prime Minister throwing £50 million of British taxpayers' money to boost his own ego? The Secretary of State herself acknowledged how difficult this process would be and that her government would not be ready for a fully functioning department to exist by September, with no organisational plan yet in place. The Institute for Government have estimated it will take at least 2 years for the new department to be properly bedded in. Does the Minister agree that it would have made more sense to focus on the issues at hand, the global pandemic, the upcoming G7 chair, hosting COP26 as part of tackling the climate disaster, global poverty, inequality and conflict? In 1997, the Labour government established the department as a standalone, independent department to move away from the scandals that had occurred when it was part of the Foreign Office and aid was used to oil the wheels of trade deals. The Pergo Dam scandal happened because the British government, under Margaret Thatcher, used UK aid to fund a costly dam in Malaysia in exchange for a major arms deal. And while those responsible for aid were against the deal, the department they were part of, namely the Foreign Office, ignored the protestations. I hope, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the timing of this decision by the Prime Minister, in the midst of the UK trying to negotiate numerous trade deals, is merely a coincidence, and I urge the Government to resist returning to those times. I thank everyone here today who has given the positive, moral case for the development work that DfID has done over the last 23 years. I know that the British public are incredibly proud of the important poverty reduction work that our money has supported in recent decades. But according to the World Bank, the pandemic will erase all poverty alleviation progress over the past 3 years, and it will push 176 million people into poverty that live at the $3.20 poverty line. And this reveals and exacerbates inequalities which already existed for people in precarious positions. The answer isn't just short-term projects and programmes, but longer-term support from the UK to help those countries develop public health, education and social protections. Yesterday, the Chancellor acknowledged that we are expecting the deepest global recession since records began. And since the beginning of the pandemic, the government have so far disbursed a fraction of the funding they have committed to support the world's most poorest and most vulnerable people in the face of the worst global pandemic for over a century. The Secretary of State has repeatedly talked about none of us being safe until we are all safe. So with the cuts of at least £2 billion from the aid budget due to the collapse of the UK economy, will the Minister ensure that any cuts are from aid currently given to middle and upper income countries, and aid spending is removed first from projects and programmes which have scored red or amber red in ICI evaluations? In a response to the Select Committee on Monday, the Secretary of State said that the 0.7 figure will sadly be smaller this year and probably next. Does the Minister agree, and would the government like the cash figure of UK ODA to be higher? Many of my colleagues have already touched on the key decisions which will be necessary to ensure transparency, accountability and value for money in the new department. The Chair of the International Development Select Committee laid out a clear set of measures. The commitment to 0.7% with a poverty focus, because other government departments are not bound to the 2002 Development Act. So is the Secretary of State, or maybe the Minister can confirm, planning any amendments or appropriate legislation? To retain ICI and resource it, to have an ODA scrutiny committee given 30% of ODA is spent by other government departments, and that there should be no tying of aid. Will the Minister commit to accepting these reasonable measures to guarantee scrutiny for UK development work? I would remind the Government that the easiest, cheapest way to guarantee this would be to retain a department which is consistently rated a world leader in all of the above. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to point to the positives that the UK can achieve in pushing for change at an international level. Following intensive lobbying from this side of the House, the UK were able to use some of their leverage to get the United Nations Security Council to adopt a resolution concerning a global ceasefire. The fact that it didn't come sooner is a shame, but this is an important springboard to ensure countries focus on tackling COVID-19 primary and secondary impacts. This takeover is a distraction from a Prime Minister who has failed to step up either domestically or internationally. The UK has failed to play a very serious role in promoting global collaboration and cooperation. The government has not used the UK's privileged position on the world stage to bring together parties to overcome this pandemic. And the distraction of a rushed Whitehall restructure has further weakened our capacity to respond. With the reduced ODA budget, there are still things which I urge the Secretary of State and the Government to commit to, which is to influence and urge for the cancellation of debt repayments for low-income countries, attach conditions to UK public money to guarantee equitable access to diagnostics and vaccines, and to commit to actively support universal healthcare around the world and pledge to build back better with the principles of climate justice, human rights, gender equality at the core of that. Thank you.